life coaching, I think, is one of the greatest gifts that you could ever do for yourself. Part of the challenge of life coaching that life coaching receives as a stigma is that it's just kind of too woo, or people don't understand, or people don't know what it is, and there's resistance around. I don't need a life coach. The fuck does that mean? You know what I mean? Yeah. So, and I get that. So in my own journey, I try to see if I've been trying to play around with how I can present myself out in the world so that it doesn't have that stigma. Because I want to be able to help as many people as possible, because I understand through my own process the value of having life coaching. Like being able to be provided tools, a perspective, a framework, a system, a methodology, in understanding how you're able to manage your emotions more effectively and more efficiently, so that you're not wasting energy, or you're not getting in your own way of your success.
Tell me how you got into acting.
How I got into acting. Do we want to go straight into that, or how it kind of led up to it?
How it kind of led up to it, like maybe something you did in elementary school and you thought to yourself, wow, I could do that.
Well, one of the earliest memories that I have in experiencing performances, I was in elementary school, and there was a group of people that came in to do a show, and they were doing singing and some kind of skits. I don't know what kind of skits they were doing, but they were performing for us, and I think I was in maybe like second, maybe third or fourth, fifth grade. It's elementary school. And when they were performing, I was in the audience, and I just remember, like, holy shit, when these guys were like singing, I was like really kind of vibing into
it.
And I was wanting to dance around, and I remember, like, holy shit, this feels really fucking cool. I want to, like, something inside me just kind of, like, there was a bug that just got awoken or whatever. It just bit me, and I remember feeling like, oh wow, this is really cool. I would love to do something like that. But I was in elementary school, right? So like that feeling, I remember that feeling, but I was more interested in playing sports. So that the feelings of that faded because I got into playing, sports, like what the little kids like to do.
Yeah.
But I never forgot that feeling, right? So anytime I would see performances, I could, that feeling would revive itself. Fast forward to college, and even in high school, I did a little. I joined a choir, the high school choir, and that kind of like revived that bug again. But I was not a singer, so I was just, I was just in the chorus, just in the back, just like moving my mouth and singing a little bit, but still enjoying and having a good time, and being part of an ensemble like that, performance ensemble. So that was kind of cool. So go to college. I was part of the Filipino Student Association at the University of Georgia. And the Filipino Student Association consisted of really just 5 Filipinos, because we're in Georgia. So we all knew each other.
Yeah.
And we were doing things on campus, and they had volunteered me to be in the show, in the play that they were producing for that year. I was like, oh my God, holy shit. I don't know if why did you volunteer me? I didn't ask to be in this play. Because what came up for me, and I've told this story before. Remember how I was telling you when I was in 3rd grade, I was in that spelling bee contest, and I spelled baloney, and it made me feel, and I started to cry, and I really felt horrible. Like I felt really shitty about myself. So when they asked me to volunteer when they volunteered me to be in that play, all those feelings started coming up. And I dreaded rehearsal. I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. And I was a wreck up until opening night. And even on opening night, I started drinking because to try to take the edge off because I was just such a fucking wreck, right? And again, mind you, it's fucking Georgia, so there's no fucking Filipinos. It's just pretty much white folks
Yeah.
that were doing it. So I'm not sure how any of this is going to go, right? Anyway, I muddle my way and get ready to get up on stage, and the time comes I'm up on stage, and I'm just squeezing the shit out of my butt while I'm just like, oh my god, there's a lot of people. Like there was like maybe 500 people in
Oh,
there.
wow. Okay.
200-300, 500 for
So
more dramatic effect.
this is your first performance ever.
This is my first performance, and being part of a play ensemble. Yeah, first time. So
Wow.
like I
Okay.
was a wreck. I was a fucking wreck. I get up on stage, I'm freaking out, and I stumble through my first line. It's like, oh god. And then I say my second line, and the way it was written out, it was somehow funny. And when I said my line, the audience responded and they started laughing a little bit. I was like, oh, okay. Let me see. Did this just happen? Let me just see if I can do this. So my next line, I said something, and again I got a reaction. I was like, oh wow. Then a different kind of feeling started to overtake my body. It's like, wow, this is fucking cool. This is a different feeling I've never felt before. So for going further into the play, I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable. And then just to test to make sure it wasn't a fluke, I did something to try to instigate a response. And I got that response. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. I want to fucking do this because people are reacting and in a positive way. And it was a beautiful feeling. I was like, oh, I want to do this. So that was my first introduction into acting, and that's when I started going down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out what I can do in that industry. But it was I was in the South, so there wasn't a whole lot of a market for Filipinos to do anything, and there wasn't really a whole lot being shot in Atlanta area.
Yeah.
So that kind of put me on cruise control for a little bit to see if I could find what it is I could do. And then money became an issue. So I had to get a job. But one of the jobs that I got was working in the Bahamas as a animator is what they called us. And what the animator does at this resort is that we would provide games during the day for the guests. And then at night we would do like these little vignettes, shows at night. So then my interest in performing got revived because it was a really good time. So I was doing that for a while, for about 6 months, and then I ended up moving to San Francisco.
And I believe that's probably when we met. At Bindlesith Studios.
Yeah. So when I got to San Francisco, I got involved with a company, a Filipino American nonprofit organization called TNT, Teatro ng Tanan, and they were doing a lot of community work, but they also were doing performances, guerrilla style performances. And I was like, okay, let me explore this. And started doing some things there, and got into some Filipino plays, and that's when I was like, okay, I have enough skill set, enough interest, enough passion to pursue this even more so. And then that eventually evolved into me getting introduced to Tongue in the Mood, which is a sketch comedy group, and that was a blast. And then moving into Bindlesith Studio.
Got it.
The rest of that was
and how long
in my life.
Okay, you were there for 10 years at Bindlesith Studio?
Yeah, 10 years at Bindlesith Studio doing sketch comedy stuff, and then doing some other full-length plays, and I was really digging the plays as well as an actor. And there was a pivot at one point where I was very serious about my acting, and one of the things that I wanted to do was be an assistant director and learn how to direct, just so I could get in the mindset of what a director thinks about when they're communicating with the actors.
Mm-hmm.
So that way I'd have a better idea of what the director was looking at and how that would affect my approach as an actor.
Got it.
Hoping to, wanting to explore the depths of my acting chops. What I didn't realize is that or what was unexpected is that I really enjoyed directing.
Got it.
That was a whole nother realm of
Mm-hmm.
performance and being in theater that was like, holy cow. Being able to, and I think why I like directing so much is because I understood what the actor's process was, being an actor myself. So that helped me become a more effective and efficient director. And that was another bug that really just like, that took me to a whole nother level.
Did you take any acting classes before all this stuff, or?
I did take a bunch of acting classes and workshops. I studied under Mark Monroe, who was a student of was there Susan Stadler? Stadler. Method acting.
Okay.
Took some of those classes, took some improv classes, and then also just when you're a part of a theater company, the opportunity to practice acting was readily available. So I was doing that a lot.
Got it. I looked up your IMDb, MarKing,
mm-hmm.
and what came across was Nash Bridges, Ed TV. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, that was when I was in San Francisco. The big show that was being shot was Nash Bridges, so I was able to get on that show. And acting in front of the camera is a totally different bear than stage theater. So it was a fish out of the water in a sense.
Yeah.
And I was really nervous too, because now I'm out of my comfort zone. I'm on a Hollywood set, and there's big time players in the show. Like Cheech Marin was in it, Don Johnson, and obviously the supporting cast. Like these are a bunch of big time.
Don Johnson is like Hollywood elite.
Yeah,
in
during
TV.
That time,
yeah,
he was just coming off of Miami Vice, and so he was like big baller at that time.
For those of you who don't know Don Johnson and Cheech Marin.
yeah. Cheech Marin of Cheech and Chong. That guy was awesome.
Our audience probably don't even know who that is.
They don't fucking know. So funny story on that set. I played a cop, and I was interacting with I forget the guy's name. His name is Jeff. I forget his name, but he was one of the
supporting role
guys, and I had a very simple line. But I was so fucking nervous, and I kept fumbling over my lines, and I was like, "Fuck, son of a bitch," forgetting that I'm mic'd up, so everybody's hearing what the fuck I'm saying, right? And so I was getting in my head about it, and because it was such an easy line, it's like, "Why do you keep fucking up?" And then he's like, "Go back to one," and then I'd come out and I fucking fell, and I'm like, "Oh Jesus Christ." I stumbled or something like that. It was like, go back to one. And then I'm like, okay, bro, just get it together. This is like after 5 takes. I'm like, oh my God, this is costing this set so much money.
Do you remember the line?
I don't even remember the line. But I was supposed to say the guy's name. So, okay, the 5th take, I'm like, okay, let's do this. I got it. I fucking got it. I got it. I'm just pumping myself up. And I say my line. I go out there, and I say my line, and I say it fucking with conviction, and I say, well, it's like, I got this, and I got this. And then, but the closing line is I say the guy's name, and I say it, but then when I say his name, I say his real name and not his fucking.
He says his professional name.
What's his character name? And then I just hear around the corner, cut. I'm like, oh, oh. That one shook me for a bit too. But I was able to play on Nash Bridges. I got to be on Ed TV.
What'd you do on Ed TV? What'd you do on Ed TV?
Ed TV, I was just one of those supporting or starring role, speaking role. And I actually got to work with Ron Howard, which was pretty awesome. But I was really green on the set, and I was just kind of like, okay, just tell me what you need me to do. Very, very unsure of myself. And we shot that, and that was really nice. I got my own trailer. Not
Were
my
you
own
in the
trailer.
movie?
I ended up being cut on the floor, so
I can't look it up. I can't.
My name's on the credits.
Okay.
But as far as me actually being actual FaceTime in the movie, no, they cut that scene out.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Well,
let's talk about like the struggles up until you got Nash Bridges and Ed TV. Like, what was the auditioning process for Nash Bridges and Ed TV?
First off, I fucking hate auditions, bro. It just brings up every insecurity. It's interesting as actors, we if you ask any actor, part of what it is why they act is because there's a level of acceptance of validation that people like feel and experience.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm doing this performance and people like me. Oh, I love that. It just feeds that insecurities, those types of insecurities that we had. So anytime I audition, I would get super anxious, super anxiety, and it would really affect my auditioning process. I rarely would come out of an audition and be like, oh yeah, I fucking nailed that. It was always like, oh my God, why am I doing this? This fucking sucks balls. This is not what, because the amount of just physical reactions that I would have, my stomach just churning, and it was horrible. I hated it.
Were they looking for an Asian cop when you went in for the audition? What was the call? What do they call it? The call list?
They were
audition list.
The call list, the call sheet, the characters that they were looking for. I was lucky in San Francisco. Like, it was a little bit more reasonable to have Asian cops because there's a lot of Asian cops in San Francisco. So that was it wasn't how would you say, it wasn't uncommon, but in general in the industry during that time, it was really hard as an Asian American actor to get any parts. It was always like I would always have to audition for Asian gang member number 1, Asian gang member number 2, Chinese delivery guy.
Yeah.
Or, like I remember one audition where someone was asking me if I could do a Vietnamese accent. I'm like, no, I can't. No, I can't.
You didn't even try, man?
I didn't even try. It was just like, at that point, I almost just walked out. I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me, bro.
Did you have an agent to get you these roles?
I did. Yeah, when I was in San Francisco, I did have an agent. And a lot of the stuff in San Francisco there was only like less than a handful of productions that were being produced. Yeah. Nash Bridges being one of the biggest at the time, and then occasionally you would get movies going in from San Francisco, and I'd be able to audition for those. But most of the stuff were like non-union or industrial type productions, commercials, a little bit of commercial stuff. But I just never got traction. I think because the number of roles for Asians were very limited, but also because just the anxiety that I experienced during those auditions just didn't set me up for really strong, powerful performances during those auditions. I felt more comfortable doing stuff on stage because I would be able to develop a rapport with people in theater, and through that was able to achieve a level of comfortability, and so my performances were a lot more effective
Got
doing
it.
theater. I
So
love doing theater.
when you were on Ed TV or on the movie, how many lines did you have there?
I just had less than a handful of lines.
Okay.
I was riding a bike through Chinatown, and I forget. I was supposed to be saying something to Jim Carrey at the time.
Wow, Jim Carrey.
Yeah, yeah. But he wasn't on the set. I was just supposed to throw my line in that direction as if he was there. And I'm like,
got it. That's acting.
Yeah, that's acting.
So in that,
and Ron Howard gave me that direction, so I was like, oh, okay, I can officially say I worked with Ron Howard.
And that was Matthew McConaughey, who was in that. Ellen DeGeneres was in that movie, correct? He was the lead guy, I think.
Oh, well, yeah, no, it was Ed TV. Ed TV was Matthew McConaughey. It wasn't Jim Carrey. Yeah, I was supposed to throw the line to
Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
Okay, which is a A-list actor now.
Yeah.
So you could say you actually threw a line to Matthew McConaughey, who wasn't there.
I got more success as far as like film in the independent circuit, and I think that's also just because it was more community oriented, and I got to know people on the set, so it was a lot easier for me to really be comfortable and take risks. But anxiety definitely through when it was a level of anxiety that I would experience in any of the productions for sure.
When you were in acting school or classes, didn't they kind of like give you like a class on what it would feel like at an audition and what to do and how to pump yourself up?
Not necessarily what I would feel like, but definitely understanding what the process is in auditioning to help try to alleviate some of that anxiety. But I had so many deep-rooted traumas that I had experienced throughout the years being younger, and that really challenged the opportunity for me to be present and really give an effective audition.
In both shows, Nash Bridges and Ed TV, how many guys were you up against?
I don't know. I'm not sure, because typically when I go into audition, I mean, I just sign in. I try not to look at the call sheet because that would just add more anxiety for me.
Like if you see 10 other Asian guys in the room.
10 other Asian guys, or just seeing the number of people in there. I found it better not to look. I just sign in and just go to my chair and just try to remember my line, like rehearse my lines and look at it that way, approach it that way. But
you weren't doing the method acting in the hallway where you're pretending you're riding a bike?
No. But anytime, like there was an audition where it may have called for some sort of nervousness or some sort of like I was more comfortable in that because I was already fucking nervous. So like my voice would come out like I would hesitate in what I was saying, or I would stutter and it would play. But because I feel like one of the reasons why I didn't have that much success in auditioning and getting more roles that I wanted was because I was operating from a place of survival and crisis mode when I was in the auditioning process. I was like, okay, I just got to do this so they like me, or I got to walk this way, or make sure I'm paying attention so that they know that I'm, that I want this. But I think how that translated is like, this guy really desperate to try to do this role, and I didn't, and obviously I didn't get as many roles as I wanted, for sure.
Yeah, but at least the two that you got gave you a lot of experience, for sure.
Yeah, they definitely gave me a lot of experience. but yeah, just during that time though, I just, for whatever reason, I could not get over my own insecurities, and just be able to show up present, and be, and give a really strong, powerful performance in those auditions. It sucked.
Yeah, yeah.
It sucked.
So I hear that you're labeling the emotions now that you can identify it. But
Mhm.
back then, you didn't know what those emotions were, or you just kind of knew that something was coming up that was blocking
I
you.
didn't know what they were. I just thought, it's like, man, I just fucking suck. Why can't I fucking get over these feelings, these emotions, these anxieties? Everybody else is able to pull it off somewhat, but why can't I fucking do it? And that added to my level of frustration, and in my process as far as an actor, because it was, I felt at that time like acting was what I wanted to do. I wanted to be the first Filipino actor out there fucking getting an Oscar, or at least being a high performing, paid full time actor, and being Filipino. That was one of the intentions that I wanted to, as far as acting is concerned. But when I look
Okay,
back at it, part of the reason why I think I wanted that was to be validated as a person, as
got it.
a Filipino, as a person of color, just because that was fueled with all the insecurities of my own view of myself, the lack of worth that I felt like I didn't think I was good enough in a lot of different aspects. And I felt like, as if I got recognized or acknowledged for my acting, that would wipe all those feelings away.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. So was there a role model that you had growing up that really you said I wanted to be like that guy, and it was you just said I'm going to pile through this audition process and
Yeah,
try to become a star.
I mean, as far as acting is concerned, like, I mean, Bruce Lee was always one of my favorite guys, because he was pretty much the only really well known Asian actor that was out there, or that I experienced when I was younger. I didn't really have any mentors to follow during that time that looked like me, but I did gravitate towards folks like John Leguizamo when he was doing his all his one man shows. When I saw him perform, I was like, oh, I want to do, that's the route of the acting that I want to do, like doing a one person show. He was somebody that I really admired, when I saw stage performances.
So what are some of the successes that you felt you had?
As far as acting or
As far as
directing?
acting, performing, in Bindle Stiff plays.
Oh man. Well, definitely Nash Bridges and Ed TV were highlights for me. On stage, my time doing sketch comedy with Tongue in a Mood was one of the best and most memorable eras in my life, because we were talking about, uh, we were making social commentary on what was happening in the world, and what was happening in the world through the perspective of Filipinos, and Filipino Americans. And it was also done in a very comedic way. Like, we would poke fun of, um, you know, we started doing shows. Initially, we started doing shows wherever we could do it, and some of those. One of the earliest shows that we did was at Gellert Park. You're from the Bay, so you know Gellert Park.
Literally at Gellert Park.
At Gellert Park, outdoor, and we're trying to do some guerrilla theater, and was just it was just a bunch of kids just doing shit out in the fucking park, and hoping people would like watch and listen. Um, that was the humble beginnings. But then we started picking up a little traction, got a little bit more consistency with the actors involved, and then Alan Manalo, who was the artistic director for Tongue in the Mood, he was the lead person. Him and Joyce started creating more opportunities for us. And then we eventually started touring around the country doing college shows. We went all up and down the coast of California, We're doing shows in Seattle, in Oregon. We did shows in Florida, Chicago. So we were able to tour as a sketch comedy group to all these different colleges and perform, and it was amazing. And then after that whole stint of the college tour, when we got back to San Francisco, we were looking for another place to perform. And one of the guys on the cast was saying that there was this Filipino chick who was doing a show at this place called Debilitating Studio. And so we went to go check her out, and her show was amazing. Lorna Aquino Chewy, or Lorna Chewy Aquino. At that time, we were all impressed with her show, and we were also very impressed with the space as well. It was a small black box theater off of 6th Street in Soma, the Soma Wine District.
Yeah, it's definitely the wine district now.
Yeah. Straight hood. For those who don't know that area of San Francisco, it is pretty hood. You got all the elements of city life running down that 6th Street corridor. So it wasn't the safest and most ideal place to have a black box theater, but it had something. There was character about it, and enough character and enough interest in the space where we were able to have a conversation about doing a show at Bindlestick. And when we did the first show, when we did the first show, we had the first show, and we literally had like 5 people in the audience members. And they were all comps. So at that point, it was just like, we're not seeing any kind of money come in. But we did the show nonetheless, and we had a good time. The crowd liked it. Our family and friends liked it.
The five family and friends.
5 family friends and members. But then we continued with the show, and then the second show, it started to get we started getting more. Third show, we actually sold out the third show, and then from that point on, we started selling out all our shows, and then we knew we had something big there.
Got it. And then you became artistic director for 5 of those 10 years that you were there?
Eventually I did. So we were doing the Tongue in the Mood show, and then there was another group called Overseas Artists, which was a younger version of a sketch comedy group. And then we got a spoken word group in there, and then we started doing music festivals. So it started becoming a thing, like a hub for Filipino Americans to perform. And then at one point, the existing consortium that was there saw what we were doing and very impressed with the turnout and the talent and the shows that we were doing. And they were getting burned out because they had been running that theater since, I think it was 87.
Wow.
And at that point, we'd gotten there like at 97. So they'd been running the theater for 10 years. So they were getting exhausted because they weren't really making a whole lot of money in that space either. And they asked us if we wanted to take the theater over, and Alan committed to that. And then Alan became the artistic and managing director of the space for a few years. And then just with everything else, with everything else, he started getting burned out. Joyce started getting burned out, and he had made the decision to step away from the theater, which was really hard for him to do because we'd seen the success of what it was taking place and all the talent that was coming in. But it became more of a mental, emotional, and physical decision for them because they needed to start taking care of themselves. So they took a break from the theater, and at that moment, that's when we came up with new leadership. At that point, it was myself, Lorna, Renee Acosta, Dan Weil, and Olivia Malabuyo. We all became leadership. Olivia Malabuyo was managing director. Myself and Lorna were co-artistic directors. Renee and Dan Wild were facilities. So that's when I started moving into leadership position at the theater. And then there was a time when Lorna was and I were co-artistic directors, and then she stopped being an artistic director, and then it was just me as artistic director. And I was artistic director until the old space got shut down.
Got it. Okay. And that's when they wanted to tear down the building.
Yeah,
they were going to leave you guys out of it.
Yeah, that's when they were gonna tear down the theater, and that process had started, like a year or two prior to the actual demolition of the building. So during that time, we were fighting City Hall. We were fighting City Hall to make sure that if that's what they were going to do, that they had to provide a space for us as Bindleford Studio, because we've already established in the city that we were a staple and a necessity for the community, the Filipino community. And we added to the, how do you say, the not the necessity, but the we provided value for the community, and the city. It would hurt the community if the city kicked us out. So we fought for the space, and eventually we were able to fight for the space and create an opportunity to have a new in the blueprints. They were able to include us in the blueprints of the new space.
Wow. So a lot of this stuff was going on. All the successes, becoming an actor, being part of Bindleford Studio, all that stuff. What are some of the pitfalls?
Oh my God. Well, when you're running a space with a bunch of friends, it gets challenging, especially when we're all just trying to figure this shit out. And when we're trying to figure this shit out, and there's accountability to the city and funding and grants and all that, it got really hectic. Like the mental and emotional roller coaster ride that we went through with the city and with each other, it got pretty turbulent. There were times when it got so bad that people would not talk to each other for years. So the dynamics with each other were tested frequently. And then also too, just for me personally, because I had all these emotions coming up, my insecurities coming up, having to deal with leadership and having to deal with managing a space and the people in it. There were my own personal demons that I had to battle through, that I just had no idea how to navigate, because I didn't know I just didn't know. I was just trying to push through everything, push through my emotions, push through all the mental anguish that I was experiencing during that time. And it was really difficult, because I again, like I said, I had no idea how to navigate all of that stuff.
On top of working at Bindlestiff, you guys are all still working 9-to-5 jobs or part-time jobs, right?
We were all working 9-to-5 jobs, part-time jobs, and running that space for all intent purposes. It was all volunteer. It was all like blood, sweat, and tears. We weren't really seeing any kind of significant, hey, like the whole time I was there at the theater, I probably made maybe $5,000. Maybe. That's probably even generous.
Wow. So how do you feel now about where the space is today, and what would you have done differently?
I mean, I'm so fucking proud of I'm so proud of the fact that I get to say that I was at the very beginning of the evolution of Bindlestiff Studio, and that I feel like I contributed a significant part into that space. And it's, I don't even know how many years later, like it's 20 plus years later, and that place is still standing and running. Like I go into that space now and there are people in there that have no idea who the fuck I am.
Yeah. Which
is pretty awesome, because that tells me like, oh wow, what we created has really withstood the test of time, and now Bindlesif Studio has the reputation of being the only Filipino American theater space that has their own space, and Bindlesif Studio is the longest standing black box theater in existence in San Francisco.
And what year did you guys start?
We took over in '97.
Wow.
But the space has been alive since '87.
So Bindlesif Studios, as it stands today, Filipino community based black box theater. Yeah. 97. Wow.
97. Yeah. We jokingly say that we recolonized Bindlesif Studio. And not to throw shade on the consortium that ran it beforehand.
Yeah.
Like those folks in the Filipino community, and most of these guys were Canadians, that ran the space. But the people in the know in the Bay Area who know about Bindlesif Studios and the history of it, we hold Christine Els, Chris Brophy, Jill Conan, all those guys in high regard because they took a chance on us.
Yes.
And without them, there is no Bindlesif.
Yeah, they basically handed the keys over to you guys.
Literally handed the keys over to us. I still have the key they handed over to me.
Can I get one? Can I get a coffee?
It's so funny because the front door of Bindlesif Studio at the time was this iron grated red door. And that was one of the pieces of the theater that we got to save. And at the 30-year reunion, they brought that door to the performance for the 30-year reunion. And I had my key with me, and I was able to unlock that door, and everybody was like tripping out. It's like, holy shit, you still have the key.
That's cool.
Like, yeah, I will never get rid of that key, bro.
That's cool. I think I had one for when I was directing there.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
To have access to a space like Bindlesif, especially during that time. Bindlesif during that time, oh my God, is probably it's historic, bro. It was historic. It's definitely one of those eras because there was a Filipino renaissance that was taking place in the creative community, and Tongue in a Mood and the people at Bindlesif Studio had a huge contribution to that.
Definitely.
Huge contribution to that.
Definitely. So, I know we talked about the pitfalls, but what is one pitfall that you had back then that you could actually tell somebody how to overcome something if it ever comes up for them?
Well,
in your acting, in building the community, in building the theater.
I mean, one is just being able to provide. As artists and creatives, we're very in touch with our emotions. I mean, we have access to our emotions, and we wear these emotions on our sleeve. But what was one of the issues, one of the challenges, and I'll speak more for myself, is like I had all these emotions come up, and I knew what these emotions were, and but I didn't know what to do with them. I didn't know how to manage these emotions because these emotions, I would wear them on my sleeve, so it would dictate a lot of my actions and interactions with people at the theater. And that was, I could say that was something that we all shared. Like we all had these emotions, and we weren't sure on how to manage and what to do with these emotions, and we ended up projecting a lot of shit on each other, and it just created a very toxic place, a toxic environment. There were toxic behaviors, toxic communication, and it just made everything more challenging. So, and a lot of that too is just, these emotions are rooted in just wanting to be heard or being validated, uh, feeling like they were of value, feeling like they mattered or that they were able to contribute. So that's where a lot of the root of the emotions came from. And when those things were not met, it would just get more, there would be more friction. So it clouded how we move in as far as leadership is concerned with the theater. That was one of the hugest pitfalls in being able to run that space.
So I know what you do today. You're a photographer, you're a disc golf player,
Mm-hmm.
and you're also a life coach.
Mm-hmm.
What led you to being a life coach? Empowerment impact. Sorry. Yeah. Empowerment impact coach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Life coach.
Mm-hmm. Empowerment impact coach. You know, it's interesting because I part of the reason this little banter is life coaching, I think is one of the greatest gifts that you could ever do for yourself. Part of the challenge of life coaching that life coaching receives as a stigma is that it's just kind of too woo, or people don't understand, or people don't know what it is, and there's resistance around. I don't need a life coach. The fuck does that mean? You know what I mean? Yeah. So, and I get that. So in my own journey, I try to see if I've been trying to play around with how I can present myself out in the world so that it doesn't have that stigma. Because I want to be able to help as many people as possible, because I understand through my own process the value of having life coaching. Like being able to be provided tools, a perspective, a framework, a system, a methodology, in understanding how you're able to manage your emotions more effectively and more efficiently, so that you're not wasting energy or you're not getting in your own way of your success. A lot of times what happens when we were going through these times when we were creating these toxic patterns for ourselves, we would get in our own way of trying to do something that was really big, or an idea or a production that would not go up just because we weren't able to communicate from our highest versions of who we are. We were always operating from a place of inflamed ego where, like, well, you're not going to listen to me. Well, then fuck you. I don't want to do the show anymore.
Got it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
you see a lot of these ideas, productions or monologues or songs not come to fruition because we're too busy trying to figure out our own shit, that we miss what really makes our soul smile, what feeds our soul to put out there in the world, to be in full expression. So, you know, that I forget why I went down that rabbit hole, but that was one of the things that, that's why it's really important I feel like it's really important to have these tools so that you can realize the gift that you truly are, and put the expressions that your medium of expressions, put them out there in the world, because the power of art is really, it's powerful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It moves people. It changes perspectives. That's a miracle. When you're able to shift your idea about something to where it aligns with you, that's a definition of a miracle, right? So being able to provide that to folks at a mass level is something that I think is really important for everybody to have. And in my own practice, for more importantly, because I've been an artist, I've been a creative, and I've been an activist, I know how much value it could provide for these folks who are trying to create impact.
What was the one thing that happened to you that led you to personal development and coaching?
Man, well, I briefly touched on these traumas that I've had when I was younger, and all of that kind of led to point of in my life, in my early adult years, where I started to notice I was feeling different. I was not feeling myself. I started feeling anger and frustration with the way I was feeling. I had noticed at one point that I was looking through some pictures, and then every picture I was looking at was not smiling. And I was like, why am I not smiling? And that caused me to go down a rabbit hole of really understanding, wow, I'm not in a good place. Like, I knew I wasn't in a good place, but for me to really acknowledge for myself, like, oh wow, you are really not in a good place, because look at you. You look like you're miserable in this picture. And then, started going down the rabbit hole of that and trying to figure that out, and started getting more angry, more frustrated with how I was feeling. And during that time, I the job that I was working was not fulfilling. I was just barely making the minimum to get by. I was also not creating at that time. I was still in leadership, but I wasn't creating anything.
So you still were with Bindlestiff at the time?
I was still at Bindlestiff at the time. I wasn't creating. I just gotten out of a bad, not a bad relationship. It was a relationship that didn't go well, and it was one of those real big heartbreaks. So that happened, and then I had also gotten in a motorcycle accident, and I had a passenger on the back, and I almost killed her. So there was like a lot of different things that just came crashing down at one time. And when that had happened, I started getting more and more into my head. And then these voices in my head started getting louder and louder and louder. And the more I tried to make it stop, the louder these voices got. And it really started fucking me. Like, I felt like I was going crazy. If there was a fringe of where craziness is, like, I was there. Like, I felt like I was in the fringe of, like, I know what crazy looks like, because I can't get these voices to stop in my head. And it started to affect how I saw myself, how I valued myself, how my worthiness issues, and was asking, the questions like, am I good enough? Why am I even fucking here? I'm starting to question my own existence. And that resulted in losing a lot of confidence in who I was as a person at that time. To the point where I would walk down, like, I remember a few times walking down my stairs at my apartment complex, stairs that I've walked down up and down thousands of times, not even thinking about it. But during that time, I remember walking down the stairs and just hesitating, taking the step, because I was questioning myself so much that I questioned even the steps that I was taking. And I almost busted my ass down the stairs, like, not just once, but like 2 or 3 times, because it was where my head was at. It wasn't being present. It was always thinking about what I did wrong, or what was going wrong in my life, and what does it mean for me in the future? Like, what was my future going to look like? I was never in the present moment. I was either in the future or in the past, and it was a dark, dark, dark time for me during those times. It was deep depression, craziness, and even talking about, like, questioning my own existence.
And back then, it wasn't readily available to go to a therapist or a psychiatrist. Is that safe to say?
I mean, it was accessible, but I was brought up and conditioned to not really talk about my feelings with anybody. Like, I was supposed to figure that shit out on my own. At least that's what I thought.
Yeah.
That you were supposed to just power through shit and just figure it out on your own. And whatever traumas that you experience in life, it was just part of your life, and you just had to deal with it. So that was my mode of operation. And in retrospect, what I really found out that I was doing was I was just suppressing emotions. And anytime I got triggered, I would act out, and it was really a result of my younger versions just acting out, being angry or frustrated or depressed or playing victim mode, or going into all these toxic thoughts and toxic language and toxic self-talk practices that were just it just created. I just started digging a deeper hole into my own misery.
Got it. And I know that a bunch of you guys from Bindlestiff and the community went to LA, actually moved to LA around the same time that you're going through all of this.
No, so I went through that depression, and then I started doing a deep dive into a deeper dive into personal development. I had heard about personal development actually through my sister. She was really doing some deep work in personal development during that time.
And you were still in the Bay Area at the time.
Still in San Francisco. So I had kind of done my own, because I wasn't going to ask my sister for any help. Big brothers don't ask for help.
Yeah.
So I started doing a deep dive for myself. And the first book I read that I got exposed to that really resonated for me was a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. That title caught my attention because that's what I was feeling. I was feeling scared. I was scared to do anything. I was always asking for approval. Like, oh, you think this is okay? Or should I do this? Or should I do that? Like, that was all. I knew that I was too scared to say, oh, this is what I want to do, because I felt like I would just get shot down or just made to feel small or less than if I made a decision purely on my own. I had to have the comfort and support of other people around me. So that's what I was noticing, I was experiencing. And when I was reading that book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, there was in chapter 4, they were talking about the chatterbox, the chatter monkey. And what that essentially is it helped me to put a label to these voices in my head, because that's what she was talking about. The voices in our head is just a chatterbox. It just runs. And so when I read that, that gave me a foundation to put my foot on, to really start to dig my way out of this rabbit hole that I was in, climb myself out of that rabbit hole. And I was able to do that for a little bit and climb out of that depression. And when I was able to finally get out of that depression, I was like, oh, okay, this is so much better than I was before. And then I was on cruise control. What I didn't realize is that, yes, I got out of that depression, but there were still residual feelings that I was experiencing. I was still getting triggered by things.
But you got out of depression, and then that's when a bunch of you guys went down to try to pursue your careers there, artistic careers there.
Yeah, so I was able to get out of that and was able to be more functional and be more present. I didn't have any more of the suicidal thoughts, and my confidence level was up a little bit more, enough to have the confidence to be like, okay, let's move down to SoCal, to Los Angeles, and see what we can do. And even with that, bro, like, I couldn't have gone down to Los Angeles by myself. I needed to know that there was some folks already that were going to go down. And so we went down there to try to figure out what we were going to do, create our own production company, and see what we could try to accomplish. And then, life got in the way. I started to try to do the acting. I took acting classes, but the acting classes are expensive. And then I also had to get headshots, and then cost of living down there. So I had to really focus on getting a job. And when I got a job, it became more about survival, and I just started working. And then slowly I stopped my pursuit of acting. I was still being somewhat creative, being involved with small things here and there, but it became more about just surviving.
When did you decide, okay, I'm going to be a life coach? I'm going to be an empowerment impact coach. When did you decide that?
Well, that survival mode was a long period of time. It was a long period of time. Um, and when I started, and then that whole survival mode, the depression started to come in again. The depression started to present itself. I started having thoughts about myself again of what the fuck is going on? What am I doing? I need a shift. I need a change. And I couldn't find it for the longest time. And then around 2018, 2019, I was super stuck. And I had gotten a call out of the blue from someone I had just met the year previously. And she was talking to me about emotional intelligence stuff. And I was interested because I knew enough already at that point, like what I was dealing with was emotional intelligence stuff. And my emotional intelligence was at a zero as far as I was concerned. Like it was just like emotional intelligence. What is that? I think I need that, but I have no idea what that's all about. And she was talking to me about it. But the more she was talking to me about it, the more I realized like, oh my God, this is sounding like a multi-level marketing type thing. So I'm just like, okay, what's the fucking ask? What's the ask?
How much is this going to cost?
Well, how much is this going to cost? Because I did experience, in my time in trying to make money, I tried to explore the whole multi-level multi-level marketing stuff. And, some of it was good. Some of it was bad. Most of it bad. But I knew there was some value because personal development was also involved in a lot of multi-level marketing companies.
Yeah.
So and that was the only reason why I was a little bit more interested, because it was about emotional intelligence, and it came at a time when I really needed to hear something like that. So she convinced me. It cost me a pretty penny, money that I didn't have, but I knew there was something inside me that said, "Bro, just fucking do it. Just fucking do it." So when I started taking this emotional intelligence workshop, leadership training, it was difficult. It was difficult. And let me also back up, because I had done some personal development work part of that, but part of the resistance I was creating for myself and not getting the traction that I wanted and helping my own emotional well-being was that the information that I was getting from folks, although good information, the resistance I created for myself was, this may be good information, but how does this help me? Because you're a white person that's telling me this. You don't know what it is that I'm experiencing as a person of color. So how can you really speak to what it is that I need, or how I get to navigate through life and through my emotions, when you don't have any context of what it is that I feel?
Mm-hmm.
So, and at that time, there wasn't a whole lot of people in the industry who looked like me. So I had already had that kind of context in my mindset when I took this emotional intelligence leadership training. And when I got in there, it was pretty much all just white folks.
Yeah.
Even the coaches were white. There were a handful of people of color, but for all intent and purposes, it was a white community that I was getting involved with. Neither here nor there, but it's just context of the experience. So going in there, experiencing coaching, experiencing some resistance, and actually expressed it to some of the coaches, like, this is all good stuff, but you know, like, what about me? Where's my fucking coach that's going to tell me how I get to navigate through this shit and provide the help, the resources that I need? And I was expressing this to one of the coaches, who is a woman, white woman, but for whatever reason, we connected. We were on this. We had the same type of energy, and I was able to be more vulnerable with her and letting her know what it is that I was experiencing, and the thoughts that I had was the self-talk that I was having in my head. And when I was telling her, like, yeah, there's no coaches out there. Where's my coach? And one of the things that they would tell us in that workshop is, well, if it's meant to be, it's up to me.
Yeah.
So she posed that to me. She's like, well, what if it's meant to be? What if it's me? What if it's you that's supposed to be that person that's supposed to be coaching? I'm like, oh shit, she just dropped a bomb on me.
Mm.
And that really shook me to the core. It's like, oh, what if it is me? And when I had that aha moment, then I was more receptive to being in that leadership training.
Got it.
And that's where I found out, and it was forced out of me. It was finally forced out of me to declare out to the world, holy shit, I am a coach. Because the other part of that too is like when these guys were doing all these exercises, all these trainings, it reminded me of like theater games. Like, oh, all these exercises that they're doing are theater games, or they could be theater games.
Yeah.
So then my mind started to shift. Like, oh my God, this is just like directing. I can direct. In fact, when I was directing at Bindlesurf Studio, I took, without actually really knowing it, I took a life experience perspective into my coaching, into my directing.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were parameters that I set for the cast and the crew on in our productions. You know, one things I would always say, effective and what was it I say? Effective and efficiency, being effective and efficient, and understanding ego. So like the language was already there in my approach to my directing. And then when I was taking this leadership training, I was like, oh my goodness, this is just like directing. So that gave me more confidence, more courage to be like, to buy into the belief like, oh, I could coach. And at that time, when I was more receptive to being coached by these people, I got to see good coaching. I got to see bad coaching. I got to see, and I got the value of what emotional intelligence does, getting a deeper understanding of what emotional intelligence was and how to navigate that, and seeing the tools and the perspective and using that. And I had huge aha moments, huge shifts, huge energetic shifts.
Mm-hmm.
When I was going through that process, I finally understood what it meant to have an energetic shift. The way I was starting to view myself started to shift. The way I started to feel about myself, I started to shift. There was a moment in that process where it was the first time, and I couldn't even remember how long, that I could actually say to myself while looking in the mirror, I love myself. I never was able to do that. And I thought it was kind of cheesy to say, oh, I love myself. That's too woo-woo. But when I actually did that, there was a shift, and I was like, oh my God. It was like a drug. It's like everybody gets to have that.
Wow.
Everybody gets to have this. And I started thinking like, wow, if I had these tools, these perspectives, the framework, when I was doing acting or when I was doing the theater, when I was artistic director, how much easier my life would have been. How much easier would have been for everybody if they had access to these types of tools to help navigate themselves out of the toxic thoughts, the toxic behaviors, the depression, the anger, the frustration. After going through that process, I realized, wow, I just wasted so much time, so much energy, so much emotional baggage and just time, just wasted just on stuff that I didn't have to. And then I started thinking about like, wow, if I had these tools, where would I be right now?
Yeah.
Would I actually have gotten that Oscar? Would I have been directing in New York at a huge theater on Broadway or something? You know, like,
yeah, or acting more. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
So what you know today, how did you actually come up with helping artists, creatives, and activists with your coaching? Like, did that just come up, or you were kind of figuring out like, who can I help?
Well, at the time I declared out loud to the universe, I am a coach. At that moment, I was like, everybody should fucking get coaching.
Yeah.
Everybody needs fucking coaching because it's just I just feel the power of that coaching and what it's done for me. And I've seen what it's done for other people.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like this leadership training program, there's a lot of bad things that I really did not like about the process. But there was enough good things in there that really resonated and stuck for me. And one of those things was hearing other people's stories when they're being vulnerable with a group of us and telling us what they experienced when they grew up. And the stuff that they were telling me, I'm like, holy shit. Like I thought my life was bad when the shit that I was fucking dealing with. Some of these stories I heard, I'm like, oh my God. And you looked so well put together, but you had all this fucking shit. And underneath it all, they're dying.
Yeah, they're hurting.
Fucking literally dying. But after going through that program, that training, that leadership training, the shift in that they've created for themselves was super amazing. And I was able to witness all of that. So that informed my passion and understanding, wanting everybody that I knew and loved, you guys got to get fucking coaching. Get over the idea of whatever stigma or preconceived notions you've had about life coaching. You just need to be fucking coached. So that was my approach to when I first started. But I still experienced in myself a little bit of that doubt, the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So started doing more deeper work in emotional intelligence and started looking up people online. And one of the groups that I got hooked into was this group called Mind Valley. And one of the guys that was in leadership there, I was listening to his podcast, and he was saying, if you want to coach, the only way to become a good coach is to start coaching. And I'm like, oh, God damn it. This guy just fucking called me out right now.
He was speaking directly to you, MarKing.
He was speaking directly to me and just challenged me on the spot. I'm like, oh, God, So one of the things that we learned in that training is that, just lean into your fears and just trust the process. So
yeah.
I leaned into that fear, and I wrote an email to a small group of folks and said, hey, I'm looking for 3 people to coach. I want to find my voice, find out what my methodology, find out, how I want to approach my practice. I need 3 volunteers. Just asking the community, and if you're down, let me know, and we'll connect. Within 10 minutes, 5 people responded. Oh yeah, I'm interested. I'm like, oh shit, now I'm in it. I got 5 people, not 3 people. I got 5 people. And I started coaching those 5 people. So when I started coaching those 5 people, I started to understand my process, started to develop my voice, started getting clarity on the direction. And then, and you know this as well, like anytime you're building a business, part of your way to success is really niching who you want to market to.
Yeah.
So when I started trying to figure that out for myself, I asked myself, okay, well, who is it that I want? Who's my perfect client? The short end of it is, well, perfect client is me. I'm someone who is an artist, who's been a creative, who's been an activist, and I've had these emotions and my emotional and mental well-being was something that I was able to work through. So that's when I started to make the shift to focusing purely on artists, creatives, and activists.
Wow. What a story. You got me like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
So how can we help this community of artists, creatives, and actors? Like, how can they get a hold of you? What is the process that you're going to take them through?
What is the...
Like, do you interview them first to see if you're a good fit, or?
Right. So for me, my initial conversation with my clients is what we call a discovery call. I like to call it we're just going to have a conversation, just a check-in, to see where everybody's at and see if there's a fit. And that's essentially what it is. I find out what it is that their goals are, what it is they're trying to work through. I established for them, you know, like why it's important, why now, what's changed in your life, or what's wanting you to make this change in your life. And once I gather that information, I let them know about what my process looks like. And it's an opportunity for me to experience what it is that their goals are, and seeing if I can actually help provide value and a perspective for them, seeing if I'm able to accomplish what it is that they need. But it's also an opportunity for them to feel me out and to see if they feel, if there's a comfort level for them. And if we feel like there's a vibe there, then we take it to the next step.
Yeah.
And the next step is really to work with me. It's a 3-month investment. We meet once a week for an hour and a half. If during the week there's support that's needed, they just text me and let me know. We create time during the week, and we have a quick conversation and help them move through a process, whatever they need. So they have access to me at least once a week. And the first month is an introduction to the tools and the framework and the system. It's the Artistry in Life methodology. It's an actual system to help you really understand and expand upon your self-awareness, to really help you elevate your inner dialogue so that you can really make powerful, impactful decisions in regards to what it is that you want in your life. So it's the first month is an introduction to that system. And then in the second month is the practice phase. You practice using the tools and the framework. And then the third month is a full integration of the practice in your life. So we take these tools and apply it to things that are going on in your daily life to help you better understand what your thought process is, understand where the source of these voices are coming from, and really walking you through that system, that methodology, and really making impactful decisions on how you move in the world so that you can be more effective and efficient in attaining that mission statement, that North Star.
Got it. Wow. All right. I got one more question for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an artist.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I have issues with creative blocks. Help me out. Like I just can't finish my script.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
How would you help me through that process in 5 minutes?
In 5 minutes, let me solve all your. And it's funny that you actually say that, because what people really get to understand about life coaching and getting these tools and these frameworks and these systems is that you may be introduced to all this information, but just because you know this information, it's not like a silver bullet. Boom, it's gonna solve all your world problems and issues, right?
Yeah.
Challenges. It's a system that you are able to use for the rest of your life. Like this is a lifestyle change. It's a practice. It's not the one and done snake oil thing. You know what I mean? It's truly a practice that you get to implement in your life to help you find that more ease, flow, and grace. So one of the first tools, not that we're going to solve the issues in 5 minutes, but one of the really powerful tools that you can do is really start to elevate what your self-awareness looks like. Like start to monitor what your self-talk is around what it is that you want to do with your art, and start there. And if you start to notice that there's a lot of negative talk in your inner dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
that is something that you get to really find out how much of that negative dialogue is actually taking place in your day-to-day. And once you are able to establish what that looks like for yourself, let's say out of 70% of my day, I have a negative energy or negative self-talk dialogue, or even just talking to other people, there's some sort of negative energy. If you're able to create that base for yourself, then the next day see if you can do less of that negative dialogue, whether it's internal or external. One of the ways you can really start to take steps in lessening the negative talk. I got this from Jay Shetty. He was interviewing somebody, but it's called the 4 C's or the 5 C's. And it's don't compare, don't criticize, don't complain, and don't something else. I'll have
we'll add that in there.
what that is. But even with those 3, compare, criticize, and complain.
Yeah, those are big things.
If you are able to, if you're able to start to monitor that for yourself and see when it is you are criticizing, see when it is you're comparing yourself to others, see when it is that you're complaining about shit. And if it's at 70% one day, see if you can start to do less of that the next day. Once you're able to start elevating your inner dialogue that way and keep that in practice, then there's going to be an energetic shift on maybe how you perceive your art.
Yeah. I could assess myself looking into my self-awareness of who I am and why I can't finish a certain project that I'm working on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, got it.
And then I'll just throw in another tool too, like, because when you complain, compare, and criticize, a lot of times you're just telling yourself a story about a situation.
Yeah.
So one of the tools that I use with my clients is a tool called Reframe to Reclaim. So reframe to reclaim the story that you're telling, because all it is when you're comparing, criticizing, and complaining is that you're telling yourself a story. So either do less of that, or what you can do is substitute the complaining, the criticizing, or the comparing, change that story to a story that's going to serve you. It's like, you know what, I'm just not, I don't know if what I have to write down for my script is good enough. It's like, that's the story you're telling yourself. The reframe, to reclaim on that is just, you know what, just write the first sentence and then see where it leads. And maybe something juicy is going to come out of it and it'll inspire you to continue writing more. That's a reframe to reclaim.
Got it. Thank you for that tool.
2 tools.
2 tools. All right, MarKing. I just want to thank you for coming on the show, coming on our podcast and being interviewed, opening yourself up to the world, letting us know who you are, what you're doing, and how you got into life coaching.
Yeah. I tell you what,
being an empowerment impact coach.
Empowerment impact coach.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Empowerment impact coach. When you're empowered, you can start to create the impact that you're meant to in the world.
Got it. Got it. Thanks again for coming on. We'll have more of these shows.
Awesome. Thank you.
Peace.